This month, delegates from around the world will meet in Uruguay to discuss the first global plastics treaty at the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee meeting called INCI. A petition for a plastics treaty that centres on justice was launched earlier this year by Greenpeace Aotearoa and has gathered already more than 29,000 signatures. Greenpeace Aotearoa spokesperson Jeresa Lee no Te Rarawa Ngāpuhi Rarotonga is with us now. Tēnā koe, Jeresa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Tēnā koe, Neil.
Now, what does a strong global plastics treaty look like?
The most important question. A strong plastics treaty looks to limit and cut production of plastic and the export and import of plastic. It seeks a just transition for workers out of that sector, that industry. It amplifies and centres the voices of Indigenous people, coastal communities, and the communities who are frontline to the plastic pollution problem. And it moves us away and promotes solutions like that are at the top of the waste hierarchy, like refill and reuse.
Yeah, good, right? Because we need to continually look for solutions. How big a threat is plastics and microplastics now, and where is it doing most harm?
Plastic is so pervasive that it's harmful to everything and everyone, really. So it's in our environment. Our wildlife are consuming it. The plastic pollution crisis also exacerbates our climate crisis, and we know that microplastics are now in our diets. It's being found in our blood, our lungs, and now we're feeding it to our peepe through our breast milk.
Jeresa, how are Indigenous and coastal communities being affected, impacted by plastics?
Well, because of our interconnected oceans, because of
in a number of ways, but primarily
extreme weather, we are, coastal communities, our Pacific island neighbours, island nations all over the world are contributing to this crisis the very least, but are bearing the biggest brunt of it. And that's why I say we need to centre their voices at the negotiation table, because if anyone knows how to live a less impactful life, it's them that are already doing that, and them that have that deep connection and relationship with papatuanaku, with our environment.
And tell us why this needs to be then a global effort, and why it's important for world leaders to be working together on this treaty.
So plastic pollution is a global problem because the plastic supply chain is global. So our domestic efforts are important, and we are on the right path here in Aotearoa. But there are many parts of that plastic lifespan and that supply chain that happen before plastic reaches our country. And so it's the supply chain, it's the interconnectedness of our oceans, that is why we need a global plastics treaty to match the scale of that problem.
And how hopeful are you that you'll see this, and what kind of leadership do you hope to see from our government?
So I'm very hopeful. I'm going to remain hopeful. Negotiations will take a couple of years. I think we're looking at maybe mid to end of 2024 for those negotiations to have completed and to have a draft version that will go to UNEP, to the United Nations, to make a decision on. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to address this, to address plastic pollution. So I'm going to remain hopeful.
We're just having a little trouble hearing you. Hopefully it'll rectify itself. I'm just wondering if you're seeing much support around this from other governments around the world. Try and pick you up again.
I think that there is a decent amount of support for something. I think that governments know that they can't ignore that we have a big problem with plastic pollution. So the trick is, the devil is in the detail, and that's making sure that we have a treaty that addresses the entire lifespan of plastic, that we all understand what that lifespan is, and that we look at, as I mentioned before, the waste hierarchy. So at the very top, it's reduce. So it's cutting plastic production at the source. That's very important. And then moving to things where solutions like refill and reuse, where we put a value on the things that we're creating, and we don't just make something to be used once and then thrown away.
How important then is it to have an Indigenous voice in any kind of global plastic treaty?
Yeah, so we hear terms like circular economy, and that's not a te reo Māori term, but it's definitely whakaaro Māori. There are ways that we lived that were circular, what we used came from papatuanuku. We were purposeful in the way that we took those things from papatuanuku, and then we returned it back to papatuanuku when we were done. And that's the kind of whakaaro that we will get if we bring the Indigenous voice to negotiations and centre that.
Yeah, I feel there's passion lined up here, and appreciate the mahi that you're putting into this. Teresa Lee from Greenpeace Aotearoa, thank you so much for your time today and for your efforts. Ngā mihi.
E mihi ana.